All right, guys. The name of this message is going to be called When the Tables Turn. When the tables turn. And I'm sure many of you have heard that expression before, the tables turning on somebody. In other words, there's a moment when somebody thinks they have it all together. They think they've got you right where they want you. And then all of a sudden the tables turn, or the flip, or the script flips, as some of us would say today. The tables turn to where the advantage is no longer in their favor, but in your favor. And that's what this message is about. This message is for somebody or for some people, but this message is for somebody who right now you are in need of some things. You are in need of some blessings. You're in need of some things that really could have already been given to you. But the thing is, the things that are meant for you have been held up for quite some time now. They are held up by people who have made you out to be an enemy. Listen, there are people who, it may be obvious who they are, but there's also other folks working with them behind the scenes that you may know nothing about. But there are people working together to hold up things that actually belong to you. They would want to use it for themselves. The catch to it is there are some things that they have in their possession that they don't quite fully understand. They don't fully understand how to use it, how to fully operate in it, because it's something that's been custom made and set apart specifically for you. And so since they are not you, they can't fully walk into what it is that's supposed to be yours. So they sit on it and sit on it and sit on it, okay, and hoping that you'll never access it or understand how to go about accessing what it is that they have. Now, it could be something that was stolen from you. It could be some things that, listen, was supposed to be passed down from them to you. But however it happened, they got their grubby hands on it. And the thing about it is, it could be different things. A lot of times we look at money as blessings, but it may be that, or it may be some type of material possessions, or it could be something else. It could be a house that should be yours. It could be a car that should be yours. It should be a husband and wife that should be yours. It could be different things. Listen, a job, a career, a position, a title that should be yours. There are things that should be yours, many things, a variety of things that you've been waiting on, but it's being held up. And what you must understand is that it's about to be all over now. The tables are turning. And what is supposed to be yours, listen, it's going to be in your possession very soon. The tables are turning. And there's nothing the enemy can do to stop it. Because God has allowed this to happen, because we know that everything plays out for the good of those who love God. Listen, God has allowed these things to play out for the purpose of building you up. For, listen, growing patience in you, strength, stamina, endurance. And he's allowed some tests to be sent your way to prepare you for what's to come. So he has allowed some things to play out in the meantime, some things to be held up in the meantime. But now it's your time to possess what is rightfully yours, because God says that it's yours. And what God says goes, and what he says has to happen, because his word does not return void. What he sets out to do, he will do it. Whatever God starts, he will finish. After all, he is the first and the last, Alpha and Omega, the beginning, the end, the first and last, the starter and finisher. So what he starts, he will for sure finish. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter what man has to say. Listen, God's ways are higher than man's ways. And so what God says will come to pass, and no demon a demon from hell can stop what it is that God is about to do for you in your life. Go with me real quick to Joshua chapter 6, let's look at this. It says, now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said unto Joshua, see, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And ye shall compass the city, and ye men of war, and go around about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him. And Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said unto them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And he said unto the people, pass on and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before the Lord, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew the trumpets, and the rearward came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then shall ye shout. So the ark of the Lord compassed the city, going about it once. And they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. And 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord went on continually, and blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them. But the rearward came after the ark of the Lord, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And the 2nd day they compassed the city once, and returned into the camp. So they did 6 days. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day, and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priests blew with the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. Let me stop there real quick. What's going on here is this, and we know this story. Many of us know this story. Pretty popular story from the Bible. It's God. He's leading his people into a victory, a major victory over the city of Jericho. And it has a wall blocking people from going in and out. And God is about to make these walls come down. And in the process, he gives them specific directions, but the directions seem really crazy. They're supposed to come together and travel, basically march around this city and not be fazed by the wall at all. Just act like the wall is not a big deal, is not a factor. Act like it's not a mountain in the way at all. Just go around this city in faith and act out what it is that I'm telling you to act out. Go about this for 7 days. And on this 7th day is going to be very special. We know the number 7 has to do with completion. It's definitely one of God's numbers, the number 7. We know numbers have special meanings in the Bible. And so they go around 7 times. And on this 7th day, after they go around it for the seventh time, these people are supposed to blow trumpets, and all of a sudden the people, God's people, are supposed to begin to shout. They're supposed to shout with a voice of triumph, with a voice of praise. Listen, a voice of faith, believing that God's going to move on their behalf. And sure enough, after going around and around this city, and after probably looking a little goofy, okay, just going around and around this city looking kind of crazy, they have to step out on faith at the most awkward time, the seventh day of doing all this, shouting and believing for God to do something, to give them victory over the enemy. And so I want to say to whoever this is for, you must keep this in mind, and this is what you must do. A few things. First off, continue to hold on and to believe for what God has for you. And you might say, well, some of you might be listening thinking, well, that's kind of silly. I mean, that's a simple thing. There's nothing amazing about it. But what you must understand is, whoever this message is for, this isn't something new or something out of the blue. It's not, listen, holding on isn't something that they're just starting to do. Holding on and believing is something that this person or these people have been doing for quite some time. They've been believing for quite some time. And whoever this is for, they've had naysayers in the background, just belittling them, saying how they just don't believe that God is going to do the things for them that God has said he's going to do. They don't believe God's going to move in that person's life. They just think that what that person is doing is a waste of time. They believe that that person who's holding on and continuing to believe God for what's to come is just wasting time. In fact, there have even been naysayers who have pointed at that person and said that they're selfish. They're a selfish person for wanting to continue after all the days or weeks or months or maybe even years that that person has waited and believed on what God has had for them. They call them selfish, and they think that they're full of themselves because they continue to hold on to the faith, to continue to believe in the promises of God. And really, it's not that this person that this message is for is selfish. It's that their naysayers are jealous. And they are jealous because they have a hard time understanding how this person or these people have continued to hold on for so long, because they keep thinking in their minds, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't have made it this long. I couldn't have held out for this long. I would have given up by now if I were them. I don't see how they continue to stand. Don't they see that they look stupid? Don't they see that they look like an idiot? Can't they see that they're outnumbered and that they don't have the proper help and assistance that they need? Therefore, they'll never make it. And so you have to understand that whoever this message is for, they've been at it for a while. They've been holding on. And just like how these people here probably looked kind of crazy here in Scripture, going around this city that's blocked by a wall for 7 days and blowing trumpets and shouting and screaming, probably looking like wild people, mad men, crazy women. But yet they still did what God said. And they did get the victory. They did prevail, but it wasn't because of their efforts and their works. It was their faith. And because of their faith, God moved, and God fought the true battle for them, which was bringing down the wall. And so whoever this is for, you must continue to hold on, even when people want you to feel like you're crazy, like you're nuts, for continuing to hold on and believe on what God has promised to you. They want you to feel like unless man says it's okay and unless man decides to move out of the way and allow it to happen, it just can't happen. But it's because their faith is not where it needs to be in God. Because if their faith was where your faith was, it wouldn't matter to them what other people thought or said, because they would know that it's what God says. what God says goes. It's like I say all the time, it's Yahweh or the highway, God's way or the highway. Not your way or the highway, but God's way or the highway. And so you must continue to hold on and believe. The other thing is to continue to do what God instructs you to do, regardless of whether or not that also makes you look crazy. So not only did they look crazy for enduring for 7 days, doing what they did, holding on, continuing to believe after all these days of going around this city and nothing happening, but they also looked crazy for their actions. Doing all the marching and then blowing the trumpets and shouting, probably looking kind of crazy. But you must continue to do what he says. So continue to hold on and believe, and continue to do what God says, even if it sounds crazy, unless you miss out on a very big blessing. A great example to help get this point across is what happened with Naaman. If you listen to me a lot, you've heard me talk more than once about a guy named Naaman. He was this man of valor, as the word says. He was a leader over people, and he was a captain in war. But the thing about it was he had leprosy, and that was something that could have ended his career, something that could have ruined his social life. And so he had to keep it hidden, but he had to find a way to be cured of his leprosy. And what ended up happening was he made it to this prophet's house, and all because a servant of the prophet came and addressed Naaman instead of the prophet coming to him himself. And because he didn't like the directions given to him, Naaman almost missed out on his blessing. He was very arrogant, full of himself. He probably viewed it that the prophet should have came and welcomed him with this huge welcoming celebration party or whatever he had in his mind. But instead, his servant, the prophet's servant, came and addressed him. And then to top it off, Naaman was told that in order to get cleansed, he had to go to the Jordan River and dip 7 times. And this Jordan River was not one of the cleanest rivers around. And so he didn't understand why he had to go and do something that sounded silly, but also how come it couldn't have just been a nicer, cleaner river. He just thought the whole thing was stupid. But someone that had traveled with Naaman talked some sense into him and explained to him, hey, just go and do this. Go and do what you need to do to get healed. So he went and dipped 7 times, and he was healed of his leprosy. In fact, his skin was about as smooth as a child's again. It was fully anew. And so you must remember, don't get so caught up in what it's going to look like when you do what it is that God has told you to do. It may look silly. It may seem silly to others, dipping in a filthy river 7 times to get clean, going around the city 7 times and blowing trumpets and shouting like crazy. It may seem crazy to others. It may be awkward. It may be something that makes you think, is God really going to do something mighty just because I'm doing something so silly? But don't let thoughts like that get into your head. Don't let the enemy, the devil, plant thoughts like that into your head. You'll end up forfeiting your blessing. So, this is what you must do. Continue to hold on and continue to obey God. As hard as it may seem, all because people will make you or try to make you feel like an idiot. You must continue to do what is told of you. So now, let's keep going. And the city shall be accursed, even it, and all that are therein to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And so I want to stop here and talk about that. Earlier in this story, which played out some chapters before this specific chapter, we see where Joshua sends out these spies to spy out Jericho. And there was a woman named Rahab who let these two spies come in, and she hid them out. She hid them for their protection. And so that was something that could have gotten Rahab into a lot of trouble. She could have been viewed as a traitor amongst her people, but she still helped out the men of God. And so when it comes time for God to give these directions on what they need to do to take over this city, he goes out of his way to mention Rahab and say, okay, this is what y'all need to do. However, remember, I want you to help this woman out because she helped you guys out. She helped the spies that came in. So now I need you guys to help her get out. And if you think about it, it's very similar to what happened with the story of Sodom when you had the two angels in disguise as men, and Lot invited them into his home and kept them hid and protected when the men came to his door to try to start trouble with these two men. And so, listen, the angels led Lot and his whole household out of the city before the destruction came. And this is what's about to take place here. When God is getting ready to cause the walls of Jericho to come down and is giving his people the chance, the opportunity to go in and overtake this city, he's going to make sure that some folks go in to help Rahab get out of this situation, out of the destruction before the calamity breaks. And so I'm pausing on this to say this. I've been talking to some folks in this message, but I've got to pause and talk to some other people. There are some folks who may be listening, who maybe you're not who this message is for or who it's been for up until this point. You are someone or some people who you know people that this message may be for. And maybe you've stood back and you've watched some things play out. And you've seen people, some of God's people, some of his righteous people, be done wrong. And you've seen them miss out on some blessings that should have been theirs. And you've seen their enemies, the bad guys, withholding things from God's people who are trying to do the right thing. And so you know that what they've done is wrong, but you haven't really spoken up and stood up for the minority. You haven't stood up for God's righteous. And the reason why is because you feel entrapped and entangled in the enemy's territory. And you're feeling like if you do something to help out God's righteous, which you would like to do in your heart, you feel like you would be setting yourself and maybe even some loved ones or your household, you feel like you're setting them up for a fall, yourself and your people for a fall because you're in the enemy's territory. So on one hand, you're not the enemy. You want to do right and do good to God's righteous who has missed out on their blessings, but you're too afraid to. It's like you're the monkey in the middle. It's like you're trying to ride the fence even though you really can't. And so you want to help, you want to do the right thing. You don't want to be in the middle of the destruction that you know is probably about to come. But you feel like you can't do anything because you've got some ties. Because you've got some ties and some connections to the folks that are the enemy. And you don't know how to get out. You don't know how to go about this without causing trouble for yourself. And what I want to say to you is it's almost like you're Rahab in this story. She was someone who, it says she was a harlot. And so when you're someone who is in whoredom, in prostitution, whatever, you've set your place in a position of sin, but God had mercy on her to help her get out before the destruction because she went out of her way to help God's people. And so what I want to say to you is, even though you've been involved with some things that the enemy has been involved in, not because it was something that you were proud of, but you were involved in some things, and you were involved in some of the setbacks of that righteous person because you felt the obligation to man to do this. You right now at this moment, you have an opportunity. God wants to give you an opportunity, but you've got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. That's the catch to this. You've got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. Rahab got out of any comfort zone she may have had to take the risk of hiding God's folks out, hiding them so that they would be safe. And so God is presenting you with an opportunity, whoever this part of the message may be for, the Rahabs. He's giving you an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone and say, okay, God, I know I'm back here on the enemy's territory. I've been associated with them, but I don't want to be a part of this destruction to come. God, help me out. Give me a way to help out your righteous. Give me a way to bless them for what's fixing to get ready to come for them. And that should definitely be your prayer, because it's an opportunity for you, whoever this is for. It's an opportunity for you to not only help out God's righteous, but it's an opportunity for you to scoot yourself out of the way of the destruction that's getting ready to come unto those who have made themselves an enemy of the righteous of God. In other words, God is trying to make a way of escape for you. But you've got to get out of your comfort zone and quit worrying about what the people in this territory that you're tangled up in is going to think and what they might do and what they might say. You need to be worried about what God will do, not what the people might do. That's the key. Okay, let me move on. I made my point. Let me move on. Verse 18. And ye in any wise keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest ye make yourselves accursed when ye take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So God lets them know, when I get ready to tear these walls down and you guys get to go into this city and overtake it, and I want you to just utterly destroy this place, you can get the gold and the silver and all this stuff that's worth like a currency, if you will, a type of money, a type of treasury. You can gather that up, but consecrate it unto me. Set this aside for me, because I have purpose for it. But as for all the other stuff that you see out there in this city, do not acquire it. Do not take it for yourself, because it will be an accursed thing, and you're basically cursing yourself by taking on the cursings of this city. Do not obtain it. Do not try to take things for yourself, because it'll hurt you, and it's going to end up hurting everybody in the camp as well. So now let's keep going. 20, verse 20. So the people shouted when the priests blew with the trumpets. And it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. So after all the stuff that they did, as crazy as it looked, God kept his end of the deal. He kept his promise. The walls fell down, and they went and overtook the city. Verse 21. And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman, and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in, and brought out Rahab, and her father, and her mother, and her brethren. and all that she had, and they brought out all her kindred and left them without the camp of Israel. So, sure enough, they did what God said. They went and got Rahab, and they got pretty much her whole household. That's the type of faith that God's people had to do what he said. And this is the type of faith to get out of her comfort zone that Rahab had, to be able to save herself and loved ones from the destruction. Even though she was a part of the enemy's camp, God showed her mercy, and we know that God's mercy endureth forever. Just did a sermon about that, because his mercy endureth forever. So let's keep going. 24, and they burnt the city with fire and all that was therein. Only the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and of iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had. And she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. And Joshua adjured them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord that riseth up and buildeth this city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof, in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it. And finally, verse 27, so the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame was noised throughout all the country. Because of this, Joshua ended up gaining fame throughout the country. And the interesting thing about this is, earlier this week on Sunday, I did a sermon called The Legacy of Babel. Legacy of Babel. And I was talking about the Tower of Babel, and I was talking about a people who went out of their way to create a name for themselves and to try to pave a legacy for themselves by creating this tower that made its way up to heaven, and by creating this city, building their own city, even though that's not what God wanted them to do. They were supposed to scatter abroad, because of course this was after the whole flood. We know, the story of Noah's Ark and the flood, and he was trying to get these people, after multiplying, to scatter about to different parts of the earth, do their own thing. But instead, the people decided, let's all come together, let's all remain here in this spot, build a city, build this tower to reach heaven, make a name for ourselves. And so because of that, they ended up really just having a legacy of what I call a legacy of Babel, a legacy of just talk, just babbling, just saying stuff, saying a bunch of nonsense, and saying this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And the things that they say to happen, not even happen, not even come to pass. Things not play out the way they said it would, because what they said was contrary to God's will for their lives. And so the legacy ended up being completely different from what they had planned out for it to be. And so we see something similar here when Joshua is talking about curse the people who built this particular city, this place of Jericho. And because of their destruction, because of God stopping the progress of the people in this particular city and bringing down its wall, listen, they ended up not having this amazing legacy. They just had a destroyed, burnt down city with a torn down wall. And the opponents, God's people, are the ones who get a legacy because of it. Joshua ended up being the one whose name was made great because of it. He had a legacy begin because of a so-called legacy coming to an end. And so with that said, let me say this. There may be some of you, whoever this is for, you kind of are at a position where you have folks who are coming against you, who are holding up your blessings, who not only are they trying to hold up blessings and have a name for themselves and try to make some man-made legacy in which they have to do things that are contrary to what God has for their life, but in the process of holding up your blessings, whether you know it or not, they're actually trying to hold up a legacy, even though that's not your intention, even though you're not concerned about making this big name for yourself and creating a legacy and making it all about you and having your name in the spotlight like they are, which is what's causing their fall. Even though that's not what you're seeking after, that's what God wants to do for you. He wants to help build you up and make a name for yourself, not because you're just so amazing, but really a big part of it. One reason is because God's going to get the glory out of making a name for you. He's going to get the glory because he knows you will make sure that he gets the glory, because it's going to be all about him for you. But also, the reason why he is preparing to make a name for you is because the enemies, the ones trying to hold up the blessing, they are trying to make a name for themselves by listen, holding you back and holding you still. And when it backfires and listen, the tables turn, the things that they tried to create for themselves end up going over to you. So you get the name for yourself, not for you, but for God's glory. But to show the enemy that he meant it. He meant every word that he has said for your life, and that nothing can come against it. And all the things that were held up for you will come to you. And you will be the one to capture a name for yourself without even trying it. With that said, go with me to Proverbs, if you don't mind. Proverbs chapter 13. Proverbs 13. Let me just get a quick drink of water. And thank you all who have tuned in and listened. I appreciate it. We're going to look at verse 22. As I was reading in Joshua, getting ready for this message, something came to mind, and it's something that I've heard be quoted from the Bible numerous times. Not necessarily that people would go to this verse and read it, but they would just quote it off the top of their head. And what they would do is they would say the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just, or how some people would say it, the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. Same thing. And they would say that. And so it came to my mind, and I went looking for it, and I found it here in Proverbs. And when I got here, I noticed that that quote really isn't a standalone verse. It's actually half of a whole verse. And it's verse 22. And that whole verse says this: a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. So when I came across this, I was looking at it and I was thinking, well, this kind of, in a way, gives it a whole nother context, because it seems like it's specifically talking about just some guy who's a good guy, making sure he has an inheritance to pass down to his children, generation after generation to come. And so if they are good, the wealth goes down to them. And if anybody is wicked and has a hold of it, they'll have to eventually pass it on down to the good in the generations. But then it was like I had to keep rereading that verse, because there was something I was supposed to catch, and then something hit me. The first half of this verse, where it says, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, that first part of it that says a good man, it stood out to me And the thing that came to my mind was this. There's an area in the Gospels, I believe, where someone's talking to Jesus and they try to tell him that he's good, and Jesus goes on to explain to them that he says, why call me good? I'm not good. There's only one that is good, and that's God the Father. And when that came to my mind, I got excited, because another way of looking at this verse could be, God leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, right? Because God is the one that's good. God leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. In other words, what I'm saying to you is this. We are children of God. You are a child of the Most High King, right? Right, because we know that he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So God has things for you, which is the point of this sermon. And so what he has can be poured out to you. We know what the word says, open up the windows of heaven and pour us out a blessing. We know that God can send us blessings. However, there's always a lot of times some blessings that are tried or blessings that are held up by people who try to keep you from moving ahead into what God has for you, right? So God, your Father, our Father, who is good and whose mercy endureth forever, he has stuff for us. And if the wicked get their hands on it, whether they like it or not, sooner or later, it will have to be handed over to the righteous. Right? Now, go up and look at the verse right before it. It says, evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. So when I looked up at that verse, I couldn't help but to look up and read that verse. As soon as I read it, something came to me, and it's this. Not too long ago, I did a sermon called Frenemies. And in this sermon, I was reading some things from the book of Psalms. And so in other words, I was reading some of David's writings, and David was basically saying in this one particular chapter, he's talking about folks who he viewed as friends. Some folks even, he viewed them almost like a brother to him. But these folks that he loved and cared about so much kept doing him wrong. They did him wrong, and then when it was their time of sorrow and sadness, he went out of his way to be good to them and to show consideration, genuine consideration for what they were going through, genuine concern. But when they got back on their feet and he was having a rough time, all they did was give him hell. In other words, and this is what he was saying, basically paraphrasing here. What David ended up saying was, all they want to do is repay me with evil. They keep repaying my good with evil. In other words, every time I'm good to them, you would think they would be good to me back, but instead they just act evil towards me. They repay my good with evil. But look at what it says here. Look at what I just read here. Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. David was righteous. In other words, putting all of this together, what I'm trying to show you is this. Whoever this is for, you've been at a point where you were like David in that sermon Frenemies, where people kept trying to repay your good for evil, right? But what you have to understand is what's getting ready to happen is what's being said here in verse 21. Because what's going to happen is all the evil that has been repaid to you when good things should have been repaid to you for your goodness. What's going to happen is the tables are going to turn. And all the evil that's being sent your way when you're trying to be good is going to go back to the sender. And what's going to happen is the evil is going to pursue them. The evil will pursue the sinners, the enemies, the ones trying to hold up your blessing. That same evil and the same cursings that they're trying to send, they're going to basically boomerang and turn right back around and go and slap them in the face. And then in turn of the evil going back to them, you will finally get paid good for your goodness instead of evil for your goodness, because it says, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. So instead of being paid with evil for your goodness, you'll be paid good for your good, while the evil that was sent to you goes back to the sender. This is what is getting ready to happen for you. And here's the interesting thing. I had looked up this word pursue because it stood out to me when I was reading this, getting ready for this sermon. That word pursue kept standing out. It's saying that evil will pursue the sinners. Not just go after them or be returned, not just that, but pursued. And so when I looked that up, it comes from this word radaf. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. But it's coming from the Hebrew word padaf, and it means things like this. It means things like to pursue, to attend closely, to run after, to chase, to hunt, listen, to persecute, and to harass. In other words, all that evil that was sent to you, listen, some of that evil was persecution being sent your way, and some of it was harassment, some of it was false witnessing, false allegations thrown your way. But that evil is getting ready to not only go back to the senders, but it will pursue them. In other words, when they're on the run, when they're leaving and they're getting away from you because they see that they can't stop what it is that God's doing in their life, no matter how far they run, the way that they would try to chase you down and follow you around so closely and watch what you're doing and send evil your way, now they'll be on the run. And listen, you ain't got to chase after anybody, because that same evil they tried to send your way will pursue them. It will chase after them. It will hunt them down. It will follow them closely. And that same type of persecution and harassment they tried to throw your way will start to follow them everywhere they go. Harassments, listen, things that were falsely said about you, suddenly they'll end up seeing moments where people will start to accuse them of things, some of which will actually probably be true. It won't even have to be false stuff made up. They'll know the truth because, of course, the truth shall set you free. But for them, the truth will cause them so much trouble, because God, listen, not only will it boomerang, will the evil go back to them, but God is about to expose some things. Just like the wall of Jericho coming down, it'll be like a wall coming down, listen, a veil coming down that they've used, an illusion being casted down that they've used to, listen, to cover themselves up while they plotted against you behind closed doors, in darkness and in secret. But God will shed light on it. The veil will be cast down. The wall will crumble. The Tower of Babel, or listen, the legacy of Babel, it all comes down. There's light shed in the dark places. And so the truth of what's been happening behind closed doors is going to be revealed. And so as they run, and as evil begins to pursue them, the same evil that they tried to throw your way, all of a sudden the truth and the realities of what they've done will also begin to hunt them. And there will be people who will come up to them and mention things. Oh, you did this, you did that. And it'll be like they'll have to taste their own medicine of what they tried to do to you, to have people come up to you and talk about your past and bring up your past and not let your past die down, even though you've tried to move forward from the past and move into your future. The evil will pursue them. It will pursue them with a passion. With that said, go with me to Matthew. I'm getting pretty close to wrapping this up because I want you to see in these next 3 areas I'm going to take you to real quick how the tables, in even more detail, how the tables will turn. Go with me to Matthew chapter 15. I'll get some water real quick. Matthew chapter 15, starting at verse 21. It says this. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. There was a woman who was not an Israelite. She comes on the scene. She comes after Jesus. She pursues Jesus and says, Jesus, listen, I need a blessing from you. My daughter needs help. I need you to help her. I need you to bless me. And Jesus has to explain to her, listen, I'm here seeking the lost sheep of Israel. And so he's testing her faith. He's denying her request, testing her faith, knowing that she is going to continue to pursue her or pursue him. And what he does in turn is blesses her because of her faith, because of her faith to continue to pursue when it seemed like the blessing she asked for was denied. We must understand that delay does not always mean denial. So she says, Lord, help me. She already calls him Lord. And he goes on to say that it's not right to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. But the woman goes on to say, I understand, Lord, you speak the truth, but the dogs do eat the crumbs from the master's table. So what she's doing is she's calling him Lord and Master. And she's saying, yeah, I might just be like a dog, but even dogs can get crumbs from the master's table. You may say, why am I bringing this up other than the fact that it's talking about a table and the name of this sermon is When the Tables Turn? But I'm using that to get a point across, and it's this. These people who feel like they have this special right to hold blessings back from you, we see that whoever they are a very self-entitled bunch of people. They are some people who it's almost like they want to play God and try to lord over your life. They want you to view them almost as masters. And it's almost like they look at it as they're so above you and you're so beneath them. And the only way you can have something nice is if they just kind of scooted off the edge of their special table that only them and the people like them can eat at. And so when it falls off that table, you can get the scraps, you can get the crumbs, you can get the leftovers, you can get whatever they deem is okay for you to have. It's like they're playing God. But the thing is, they're not God, they're not Jesus, they're merely men. And you must understand that Jesus, of course, is your Lord and Master, not them. But this is how they want you to feel. Like it's got to be all on them whether or not you can be blessed. And that is not the case. You must continue to remember that Jesus is your Master, and what you get comes from his table. So now, hold that thought, because there's still a point that I'm progressing with this right here. Go to chapter 21 now. Still in Matthew, go to 21, because there's a point that I'm making real quick. 21. I'm still trying to get this point across. Just bear with me. Look at what it says on verse 12. It says, and Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves, and said unto them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. So Jesus goes into this temple and he's cleaning house. Matter of fact, in this Bible, it's a study Bible, and right before verse 12, they give you this little caption to tell you what's about to happen, and the little caption says, cleaning the temple. And that's what Jesus did. It was the cleaning of the temple, but he didn't go get a broom and sweep. He didn't get a mop. And go after the floors. He didn't get a duster and go after stuff. He didn't have no paper towels wiping off countertops. His way of cleaning house was to remove some thieves out of his temple, to remove some folks who were making what should have been a house of prayer for all of God's people, a den of thieves. Because what they've done is they've set it up to where only them and the people like them and the people that kiss their behinds can have a good time in the house of God. But other folks that don't want to do things their way and who don't want to make an idol out of them, listen, they either can't participate or they can come in, but they have to be treated different and treated less than and looked down on. And so now you see where I'm going. I'm tying this in with what I just read to you. Listen, in 15, where I was talking about how you have these people who they look down on you, and it's like they're sitting at this special table only for them and the people that they want to be there. And so they're sitting at this grand old table that they have deemed you not good enough to sit at, and they just want to every now and then just maybe brush a little scrap off to you, and they enjoy it, and it's funny and it's entertaining and amusing to these self-entitled people who sit back and watch you struggle and do all you can with the best of your ability to do all you can with all you've got. And so even here we see that Jesus comes in. He puts a stop to people that have this mindset. The people who have made this house of God into a den of thieves. They set it up to where even though they may portray it as something for everybody, for all of God's people, anybody with a brain can clearly see that, listen, they have caused a segregation, if you will, in this temple. And they have set it up to where if you don't kiss behind, if you don't lick crack, you cannot participate at our special tables of thievery here. And Jesus goes in, and his way of cleaning house is he starts whipping folks, getting these people out of here, getting these thugs, these thieves out of here. And what he does is he turns over Oh my goodness. He starts turning over the tables. When the tables turn, he starts turning over the tables. Now, hold that thought. I'm going to take you to the last spot that I need you to go to, and I'm fixing to wrap this up and make this point. I'm enjoying this. Let's see. Go with me to Psalms, and go with me to what is probably the most popular psalm. Go to Psalm 23. And look at what it says in verse 5. He says this, David says about God, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. He says the Lord will prepare a table for you before your enemies. So now let's put this together, right? Let's put it together. Here we go. Listen, this gets good. You've got people, like I said, at their special table. Grown folks acting like it's high school, enjoying being the popular ones, the cool kids. And so, like it's at lunchtime in the cafeteria where all the cool kids get to sit together, right? That's how they're acting. We're out of high school. This is a long time ago stuff, this high school thing. But we got these folks acting like this is still school, and now this is their opportunity to be the cool kids that they might not have gotten to be in the past. This is their time to be the bullies. This is their time to feel like the popular jocks or whatever. So here they go. They got their special table. Come on. And you can't sit at it. And they're jealous because God wants to do something with you that he can't do in them because of how they act, but they don't want to get that. So they want to, they want to stand out and get what God's trying to do for you, but they don't want to get up from this special, holier than thou, too good for everybody table. They want to have their cake and eat it too at this cafeteria table. But they can't have both. But they don't want to get up from the table. So they can't have and operate in what God's trying to do for you. Right? So they're at this table. Here they go. They're up here. Or so it seems in their mind, right? You're down here. Right? And so they think that they can just scoot stuff off their table when they don't want it, and that's what you can have. Right? Because you're down low. You're lower than them. They're trying to master and lord over you, right? I'm putting all this together. Now, we just read that David is saying that God is preparing a table for you before your enemies, right? So what's happening is, while you're down low, you're sitting at your table, and you're just getting whatever you can, whatever they're willing to drop down from their special little table, right? And what's fixing to get ready to happen soon and very soon is God is going to show up and show out. And what he's going to do is he's fixing to start whooping some behind, and he's going to turn over their tables. Now, if their table is up over your table, oh my goodness, if their table is up over your table, and God turns over their table, guess where all the stuff that was on their table is about to land? Oh my goodness. That's right. It's about to land on your table. All the stuff they were sharing on their table gets to fall right on your table. So you may be wondering, what is this table that God is going to prepare for me before my enemies? It's simple. All the stuff that they have in possession of that's supposed to belong to you, that they think they can pick over and just give you scraps, the whole shebang-a-bang is about to be flipped over, and it's going to land right before your eyes, right in your lap, right on your table, the table of the folks that just aren't cool enough to sit at the cool kid table, even though we're too old to be trying to be the cool kid in school. Come on. Oh my goodness. So now, when they finally do get up and see what's done happened. Oh my gosh, what's happened? Our table's been turned over. They got to look and see you sitting there at the table that they thought they were too good to sit at, and now their whole buffet is right there at your table. So, with that said, oh, I'm enjoying this. With that said, do not become discouraged. Do not give up the fight, because really the battle is the Lord's. All you got to do is do your part. Keep doing your part. And in that special moment, God is getting ready right now at this moment to give you the victory, to bring down the walls, to tear down the barriers, all these rooms and walls and secret places that folks have hid behind and watched you. I don't know how they did it. Maybe they had their own spies come and spy you out. Maybe they've watched you from a distance. Maybe they've paid people to watch you at your job. Maybe they've had people that they knew were your friends but really could care less about you. Maybe they've paid them to sell you out and give them information about you. Maybe they've even used folks in churches to watch you and then go back to them and say, oh, this is what's going on. This is their spiritual progress. Here's their growth in the church. Maybe they've had sorcerers and those in witchcraft try to view you in crystal balls. Maybe they've done some stuff in the dark arts they shouldn't have, and maybe they want to try to use astral body projection to try to get out of their body and go to your house and be nosy and try to see what you're doing. There's a whole laundry list of things that they could be doing, using people they know to watch you on Facebook, and in reality they ain't doing nothing but seeing the same stuff they see when they see you on Facebook. So what's the point? You know what I mean? But to them, they're really doing something. Whatever means they've been doing to try to investigate you and to try to dig in your past, what's about to get ready to happen is God's going to blow this up, and what's going to happen is these tables are going to be turned, and what's about to happen is all the dirt that they've tried to sweep under the rug, it's all going to be aired out for all to see. No skeletons in the closet. Closet doors open and skeletons just falling right on out. And that will pursue them. That evil that they tried to throw your way will pursue them with a passion. The tables, right now as I speak, are turning. No more will you see a lot of the enemies that you've seen. It's time for you to go to the next level. Whoever this is for, I hope you grab onto it right now. And for those of you who, like I said before, you're the Rahabs, you want to help, you want to do the right thing, you just don't know what to do. It's time for you to get out of your comfort zone. You better quit worrying about what the folks around you think, because it might be due to you that they get saved, that they get out of this mess. But you've got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone and obey God for yourself and them. I thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to pray us out of here. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another time to minister another word. And Lord, I pray with everything in me, and I'm believing with everything in me, that those who need to get this word will grab it, will eat it, will consume it, that it will nourish them, that it will get down to the bone, that it will get down to the nitty-gritty, Lord. Lord, I thank you. And Lord, I'm excited to see what you're about to do in the lives of your people. Lord, bless your people. Open up the windows of heaven, pour out a blessing. And Lord, let the blessings fall and pour out from that special table, Lord. And let it fall down on the tables of them that have been rejected, that have been outcasted, those that have sought your righteousness, those that know that your mercy endureth forever. Lord, I give you the praise, the glory, and honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.